This is Todd Toback, and welcome to the show. We have a very special guest for you today. We have a wholesaler and a self-storage investor who has been in the business for 4 years. But what I love about today's story is that basically Kris has doubled his business in the last year. It's on track for almost $1 million, maybe more. He may bust through that this year, but he has got a lot to share with you. I've seen him grow tremendously in the last year. Super high profit business, low overhead, amazing team. And I got to tell you, Kris started right where you started. So if he can do it, you can do it too. So I want to welcome you to Kris Oliver. Kris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks so much for having me on.
So Kris, do me a favor. And I always like to start our interviews with, how did you get started in real estate investing? What were you doing before this?
So before this, I've been a licensed attorney for about 10 years. I did that primarily on my own. I started my own practice with the help of a lot of people. For about 5 years, that's all I was doing. I knew I wanted to do something more. Always had a real interest in real estate, whether it be construction, new development, flipping houses. Always wanted to do it, just didn't know exactly how. So I had a law practice for 5 years. I started out on my own, did a little bit of everything, got exposure to a ton of stuff, ton of different people, everything from, criminal defense, divorce, civil litigation, Chapter 13, Chapter 7, bankruptcy, probate, just anything I could do, which, really ended up helping me a lot. And then, somewhere along the way, I was just seeing what all the, other sole practitioner attorneys were doing. And it seemed like a lot of them are still doing the same thing 30 years later that I was doing now. And I was already getting a little bit burnt out. So I dug in a little more, found some podcasts like yours and others, and learned about how to find distressed sellers and motivated sellers. And I dug into that, dabbled with it for a little while, and ended up creating, basically my own list, mailed it just enough to get one seller to call me back.
So let's stop there for one. Hold the horses there, right? Because we're going to get into that. But basically, I take a look at this because you're an attorney, right? A lot of people go to school and they, go to the undergraduate 4 years, and obviously you went to law school. I'm assuming you took the bar in your state, right?
Right.
You passed it. Now you're making a good income. I don't know, what was it, 200, 250, 300 an hour as an attorney?
Yeah, a lot of stuff I did was kind of flat fee stuff, but yeah, it's something like that. I was making a good living, right, but I wanted something more.
Kind of trading dollars for hours at that point.
Definitely trading my time.
So what was it that, like, the wanting, the seeking, right? You're doing this and you're looking at everybody else, because a lot of people are like, oh, he's a lawyer, he's rich, right? And now you want to jump in, and now you're listening to wholesaling podcasts. Like, everyone must be like, what the heck are you thinking, right? I don't know, what did mom and what did mom and dad say?
Yeah, well, they, I have great parents, and they're really supportive, always have been, of anything I wanted to do. And, of course, it scared my mom to death, when I even started talking about changing. I come from a background with no attorneys,
right?
Very blue collar background. We weren't in bad shape by any means, but not very modest. My dad cut timber for a living. My mom, stayed home with us a lot, worked for the school system part-time. So even when I decided to go to law school, it was a pretty foreign idea to them. And, I graduated college with a construction management degree in 2008. And then, most places there wasn't a lot of residential construction management going on.
Right.
And I'd also worked for a construction company. So that's where I learned a lot of the, ins and outs of actual home construction. So I had that background, but also what I learned in that job is I was not a manager. I did not want to manage construction projects as my sole, my main role in any kind of place. So, I was seeing the owner running around in flip-flops and shorts, And here I was working, 12 hours a day for him. I was like, I'd rather be that guy if I can. How do I be that guy? And of course, I was a bit naive then. And I thought, well, attorneys make a lot of money, supposedly. So, nobody's hiring, out of our construction program. I wasn't really a good fit for that anyway. So I was like, I'll just go to law school and try to make a lot of money and then get back into this later.
Right.
So went to law school, went to night school, which is great. I was able to pay as I went, so I didn't have to incur a ton of debt. So it was like a lot of people, I think, go to law school and think this is, a huge commitment, which it was. But it's not like I came out with 200 grand in debt that I had to be strapped to a big corporate law firm job to pay it off. So I had that freedom. Went into it. I told my wife, we got married not long after I got licensed, and I said, probably not going to do this forever. And even then, it was my plan to find something else. I just really wanted to use it as a tool to gain knowledge and, open some doors. And that's exactly what it's done for me.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm going to continue with that story because here's the crazy thing. I mean, we've talked a lot, and it seems like, someone listening to this may think, oh my gosh, do I have to have a law degree or do I have to have a construction background? Right. And it sounds like you've made some great contacts with that. Right. But I want to reiterate on this show, you don't need any of that. Right. It seems like, Kris, that did help you if you're watching this on YouTube, right, or listening to us on the podcast. Kris just nodded. But the amazing thing was, it sounds like you knew what you didn't want, and that kind of pushed you to maybe what you did want. So let's talk about this first deal, because I know you mentioned, hey, you mailed a list and all that other stuff, right? Again, we can, share as much as you want, and you can keep some stuff private, but me, I always like to extract as much information as possible, right? So you decided, and actually the list that you use is not that secret. As a matter of fact, everyone talks about, everybody and their mother, I heard, talks about using this list. So I don't mind asking you sharing. So you decided to work one list. Is that right?
Right. And it began, I was going to foreclosure auctions. This was 2016, 2017. And my brother, I've got an older brother, and he's been really successful just flipping houses, very small operation, but very profitable. So I thought, well, I'll just do that, because I had access through some of the contacts I'd made, and, the credibility I'd gained. I could get access to funds, but I was going to foreclosure sales and people were just paying astronomical prices. So I quickly learned that wasn't a good use of my time. I had a little experience with direct mail prior to this because, I had a very heavy criminal defense practice, and, it's pretty easy to find out who got arrested and shoot them a letter. So I learned how to, actually do a small direct mail campaign that way, just trying to gain clients. And so I was sitting in my office one day, my law office, and my father-in-law was there. And I was like, how do I find these, these people that are getting foreclosed on? Because there's a way to find them, but it's not just incredibly intuitive, especially in Tennessee. There's a specific document that's normally recorded at the trustee's office, prior to the foreclosure being advertised in the newspaper. So I wanted to get to them as soon as possible. So I began, in my downtime at my law practice, I wanted to build a pre-foreclosure list. So I started, just digging through the county I was in. The Register of Deeds office had a good online system I could dig through for substitute trustee filings to try to figure out who was getting foreclosed on.
So I'm going to stop you right there, Kris, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things, if you're listening to this, what Kris is basically talking about is mailing people who are in foreclosure, right? He's looking for people who are in foreclosure, and he wants to get to them as fast as humanly possible. And so he went directly to the county in which the property resides. So there's documents that are filed, and he went direct to the source. So you can buy the list, or you can go directly to the source and get it a little bit faster from the county. So if you're like, oh my gosh, what's Kris talking about? That's what he's talking about, right? And how can we mail these people? Is that, am I, we don't say
absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. I had no idea if it would work. I listened to a lot of podcasts about mailing these huge mailers, you touched on it a moment ago. Attorneys are supposed to have a lot of money. I mean, we made a lot of money, but you don't always get to keep a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a lot of money left over, to just invest in things, especially the first 5 years when you're getting started. So, I went in, dug through, the filings, which, I didn't know how many I needed. I knew there was a time frame on how long these people may be an actual candidate to sell their house to me, because they were probably getting foreclosed on. And after their house was sold at the auction, they could no longer sell it to me. So I can't remember how many I pulled. I want to say maybe I pulled 90, 60 to 90 out of one county, and sent one letter. Maybe I didn't hear anything. Maybe I sent another letter. All of them got the same letter, very simple. I did mention in the letter that I was an attorney, but I made it clear to them I wasn't, trying to solicit them as a client, that I was, basically just trying to buy their property. I wasn't offering any kind of foreclosure, help or anything like that. Just simply offering to buy their property. Had them, I'd listened to enough podcasts that I could put a certain phone number on the letter. It was a Google number that I had. I had it programmed in my phone that when someone called that phone, it said foreclosure lead. And, I didn't mail long at all. I think actually I mailed for a little while, then quit. Maybe I mailed 2 mailings. Then I got fed up again. Maybe I started making a little more money. Maybe things got a little less stressful with the law practice. I got a little lazy. But then things got a little stressful again. So I'm going to mail them again. So I mailed them again. And one day on a Saturday afternoon, I remember the phone finally rang and it said foreclosure lead. And I'm an introvert. I don't like just talking to anybody on the fly, hardly. I mean, I'll talk to people I know, but it's tough for me to just take a phone call from somebody I don't know sometimes. It's weird, but it is. And I remember I looked at it and I didn't want to answer it. I just threw it down on the chair, left the message. And, basically it was a pre-foreclosure. He told me what he owed on the property. He said he would take that much. I knew right away that I could pay that. I said, well, I'll come by tomorrow. We'll sign a contract. And I did. And we closed it 5 days later.
Nice. How much did you make on this thing?
Well, how much should we have made, or how much did we make?
Well, both. Let's do that. Let's talk about both of those, because I think every single real estate investor has made that mistake.
Yeah. So I think he owed about 90,000 on the property, and it was worth, probably looking back on it, was probably worth in the 150 range at the time, which is now seems like kind of a tight spread. I didn't have the funds myself to just take down the 90,000. So I had a partner that had a HELOC, or I got a partner that had a HELOC on his house. We used his funds to, pay off the mortgage, get the guy out. And then, the learning process definitely started after that, as far as how to dispose of an asset. We decided, learning from my brother who's flipping houses himself, I thought, well, we'll just go up there on the weekends, clean this thing up, do it ourselves kind of thing. And we did, and it was a terrible remodel job. And even then I thought, well, we'll just sell it ourselves. We'll stick a sign in the front yard. We'll basically be the realtor, right? Because that'll save money. On that particular deal, we ended up becoming motivated sellers ourselves. We had this money tied up. We didn't really know what it would sell for. We ended up putting a sign in the yard, didn't really get any calls, got a little desperate, started calling around, somehow found a buyer and locked it up for like 138. We might have had, $10,000 more. So we're maybe at 110 at that point. And then, of course, they had a long inspection period. They ended up retrading us or renegotiating their price, and we ended up letting it go for about an $18,000 spread.
All right. Well, hey, first of all, I love that story. So many learning lessons. If I had to take a look at that, I'll share my learning lessons, and then maybe you can share that with everyone who's listening, right? Number one is, hey, maybe you shouldn't, you may have not even needed a partner on that one, right? Maybe you did, but the cool part about that is if you did need money, you got a partner, which was very cool, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is not selling it yourself. Oh man, I mean
Hmm.
that's like a big no-no, right? The time
Yeah.
and the
Right.
energy, and I realize every time
Yeah.
I've tried to save money there, like I've paid in spades. I remember back in 2008, I bought a mobile home, and I got my mother-in-law help me clean this thing, right? My mother-in-law, not my mother.
Yeah.
And she helped me pull weeds and like scrub the place. And I wound up taking a loss on that property too, actually, right?
Hmm.
But we took we took a pot, for plants, and it's still in her garden. So every day I say, hey, this is, your payment for all of that.
Right. Yeah.
But the cool part about that was, the rehabbing and doing that yourself. Obviously, you look back and probably think that wasn't the best use of your time. So, obviously, it looks like you barely made any money on that, but you still kept going. And I think that's just awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I was so excited that that I created a lead, that turned into a profit. Even though we mishandled it, we still came away with some money. But to me, it was just so eye opening that somebody be willing to, I'd heard this, but just to really find out proof that there's somebody willing to sell their property at that much of a discount.
Right. That's the big
And
shift.
yeah, for sure. And then, the biggest learning things is now, I barely even go to the houses if I can keep from it. I mean, I just don't have any business being there. It's not my highest level activity by any means. So definitely not going to be going up there to mow the grass or cut limbs out of the trees like we were doing back then. And then definitely hiring either, having a good list of buyers ready to go or listing on the MLS.
Right.
So we probably easily left 20 grand on the table with that one. But
well, I'm glad you talked
it
about listing on the MLS. We've talked a lot about that on the podcast over here and really getting the highest and best use. So, I know we're going a little bit long today, but let me ask you this, because obviously that was your first deal. Now you've got $1 million business, right? I've seen your business, double in the past year. Tell us kind of what your business looks like today. What's working really well in this market, and how your business is progressing.
Right. So, we still continue to do direct mail to pre-foreclosures. That's been our bread and butter for a long time. And, in the past year, we've branched out to some more, high equity type lists and larger mail campaigns. Last year we made, I think we brought in like $500,000 just on pre-foreclosure lists that we created, that we mailed. I mean, which is great because it doesn't cost hardly anything to mail that small amount. I mean, we're mailing maybe 400 pieces a month. And, we've kind of compounded on that list. Now we do try to send some text messages. We've just started cold calling that same list. We also target some other niche lists and had some success, like dismissed bankruptcy lists, probate lists that we've either bought or obtained ourselves the same way. And the key to it is just being consistent, picking something, being consistent, sticking with it, and then just slowly adding on other things.
So I want to peel this back, because someone new listening to this is like, oh, well, Kris was an attorney and he's got all this access to the special list and I can't do it. Wah!
Yeah.
If someone's listening to this, do you have access to those lists because you're an attorney, or they could go get them themselves?
No, anybody could get these lists for sure. And I don't pull any of the lists myself anymore. I've trained other people to do it. They don't have to act like they're me to get them, it's all public information. You have to fight for it every now and then, meaning sometimes that public entities aren't excited about giving it to you, but it's there.
Right. It's public information directly from the county.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, all right. So now, you went from this being in a career you hated, doing that first deal, scratching and clawing, making a bunch of mistakes, which I love, focusing on one marketing channel. And I cannot emphasize that enough, right? Do not try to do 20 things at once. I just love it that Kris just focused on this one and then slowly adds others. three pieces of advice. Well, give me between one and three pieces of advice that you would give someone either just starting out or trying to grow. What are the three pieces of advice that you would give them?
Um, well, if you're just starting out, I mean, you really gotta you've got to take some action. You got to do something. I mean, whatever that means for you. There's a lot of information out there, and most of it's good information. There's Todd's got awesome information out there. There's a lot of other people that have great information, and take action and stick with it. If you can't afford, if you're going to do direct mail and you only have $5,000, don't just mail one $5,000 campaign and hope it works and quit. You've got to pick something that you can continually do, and putting yourself in some kind of, either around enough information that people are, like Todd, are putting out. It's going to make you challenge some of the beliefs that are keeping you, from taking action or thinking that you can actually do it. It's probably the biggest thing for me in the beginning, and once you get in the growth phase, not getting distracted by every shiny object, sticking with it, and eventually, getting to a place where you can just really hire great people to work with you.
That's awesome. Kris, one of the things I think I also want to mention is that you're now doing some self-storage,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Seems like you're building up your net worth and cash flow doing that.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit, maybe, 15, 20 seconds of what that is. And then I gotta, people in your local market, they've got to connect with you. If you want to be around a winner, if you want to do deals with a winner, you gotta hook up with this guy. He is moving and shaking. And just like you talk about that environment and being around that, you got to connect with Kris if you're in his market. So tell us a little bit about your self-storage, and then we'll move on to how to get in touch with you.
Yeah. So around the same time, I got into the house wholesale and flipping side of things. I was also interested in self-storage. I think I actually got into that first. Around that same time, I acquired a piece of land and just, made the decision that I was going to build a self-storage facility because I didn't think I could find one to purchase at the time. So, I built 30,000 feet of square footage here in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. Managed and leased that up within 2 years. And now we're doubling the size of it. And I've also, it's a similar strategy to wholesaling houses. You just find a underperforming or undervalued property, put it under contract, and either wholesale it or keep it. I've done the same thing with a smaller facility about 2 or 3 hours, or about 2 hours away. It was a very cheap purchase, $250,000. We put a little money into it, and it's probably valued at $750 now, and cash flow's great.
That's
So
awesome.
I'd love to have more of those. That's definitely something I always want to be involved in.
Okay, well, what markets are you buying in right now? If people want to partner with you, that maybe they've got a self-storage unit, or they want to maybe become a member of your team wholesaling houses. What markets are you in?
So primarily for wholesaling houses, we're Middle and East Tennessee. If you're familiar with Tennessee, that makes sense to you. But really anywhere in the state, but we mainly market to Middle and Eastern Tennessee. With self-storage, definitely anywhere in Tennessee, and then really anywhere in the Southeast if the deal makes sense. The way we manage the properties, they can be managed from anywhere.
Awesome. So how can they get a hold of you?
The best way to get a hold of me would be my email. It's my first name, Kris with a K, so KRIS at iBuyHousesGNA.com.
Awesome. By the way, I got 2 free gifts for you if you're listening to the show. If you're looking for the motivated seller script that I like to give to, or that I train my acquisition specialists to use, we've done over 1,400 deals. Go to nolimitsrealestatinvesting.com/script. Also, if you want to connect with me in a Facebook group, go ahead and check that out at wholesalingconnect.com. That'll take you to the Facebook group that I'm a part of, and I would love to connect to you there. Thank you so much, Kris. And man, loved having you. Great show.
Yeah, thank you.